Hey squids, I wanted to talk to you guys about electric cars. If you don't know anything about me, you know I love electric cars, but electric cars are not really that environmentally safe. You know, because most of the time you plug an electric car into your house, you're using coal power to power it. So for me, the electric car is kind of like a farce. It's kind of like when people started buying Priuses to smell their own ass. Now, I love Priuses. It's one of my favorite hybrids, and they make a lot of sense for people like me. But I do wish I could afford an electric car, and I wanted to talk to you guys about which electric cars you can possibly get in the used market that are very good and safe, reliable, and why the reason that you would want an electric car or motorcycle. The reason for me is that it's very low maintenance. I don't really like to do too much maintenance on vehicles, and it makes a lot of sense. The electric vehicles don't have oil to change. They are very easy to keep up. The only downside is that they have batteries that go bad. You have the Nissan Leaf. They make the earlier Nissan Leafs, and you can get those for $4,000 to $6,000, $8,000 with maybe like a newer Leaf. The problem with the Leaf is that their batteries are terrible, and they only have, I think brand new, they only had a range of 80 miles. So right now in the used market, a earlier Leaf probably has a range of 50 miles. And of course in the winter you're only going to get 30 miles. So very cute cars. I do like the Nissans quite a bit, and I kind of wish their batteries lasted a little bit longer. Now Nissan does have a new Leaf out, and I heard it's got a longer range, but it's not Tesla like range. It's not over 200 miles. The option is the Chevy Bolt, not the Volt, the Bolt. The Bolt is kind of like this weird hatchback car crossover thing. I hear it's very good, and it's a four-door car, so it looks good for an utility car. It doesn't have any of the sexiness that Tesla has. It kind of looks like a dorkmobile. Right, Sophie? It kind of looks like a dorkmobile. So it's not a very good looking car at all. And the good thing with the Bolt is that it's got a 200-mile range. So when you have a 200-mile range, I think that relieves a lot of the range anxiety that people talk about. That was the problem with the Nissan Leaf. They made the range a little bit too short, and people, even though they had like a 10-mile commute, people generally don't do that sort of thing. They also want to go out on the weekends and drive around, or they go to work and then they have to go to the grocery store, and they don't want to have to worry about charging every single day. So that's the reason I don't think the Leaf did as well, even though it sold quite a bit. But I think it's because it was just cheap. Another option is the BMW i3. The BMW i3 is kind of like a weird SUV with tiny thin wheels, but I heard good things about it. And of course, like normally I would not buy a BMW or anything, but since it's an electric car, it's hard to screw that up. So all of a sudden, all of these cars tend to be much more reliable. The i3 in the used market could be bought for, I think, $15,000 to $18,000. And they make a special version of the i3 that's got this REX or Rex engine. It's like basically a little internal combustion engine as a backup that just keeps the car. If you ever run out of juice, that thing just kicks up. But for me, like, that adds to the complexity. And it's the same reason the Volt kind of didn't do so well. There are a couple other choices that people tend to avoid, and one that I kind of find fascinating. You know, all of these electric cars, one of the things that they have in common is that they're extremely heavy. This damn CR-V is in the middle of the road. not paying attention. One of the cars that's an electric one that is often neglected is the Chevy Spark EV, and you can get that one for around $10,000 to $12,000. And what I like about the Chevy EV is that there's no gas engine, but if you get a Chevy Spark, it's a piece of shit because it's just a econo box that's not very reliable. But if you get the EV, it's kind of hard to mess up an electric motor. And the Chevy Spark is a light car. It's got a short range, so the battery's small. That means that it weighs less. So that's the reason. Man, look at this guy, is always in the middle of the fucking road, probably on the phone. I've noticed this car even before I turned going over the double yellow. Idiot. Yeah, he's paying attention to his phone. It's like some old guy. Yeah, the Chevy Spark would be a really good electric starter. Look at those pigs. It's like Pig Nation. So Chevy Spark is a really good alternative. It's cheap, 10 to 12,000, and of course, you know, you can't really get electric cars much cheaper. That's the reason I bring it up. There's some other alternatives kind of like the Chevy Spark. The Chevy Spark is basically a gas car that they converted to electric. Same thing with the Golf, the Volkswagen Golf EV. It's just a Golf that's been converted. And oftentimes, like, I don't think of those as great alternatives. I would want the car that's been designed as an electric car instead of like an afterthought to make money on the electric world. It's a very good alternative. It's a good car. It's small. It could be a good entry-level car to get into the electric car market. But for me, if I was to buy an electric car, I would want a name brand. I wish Honda and Toyota would make full electric cars. I don't think Toyota is going to be making an electric car because they used to own a lot of the Tesla stock and they sold it because Tesla was cutting into their market of the Prius. But I heard from the CEO of Toyota, he wrote a letter saying that he has no interest in doing full-on electric cars. So that's that. I'm sure they'll change because the market is just going towards full electric cars, and the United States has got it's got a lot of say in the world market. I think electric cars are really cool, but for poor people like me, they're not good because, like, you need a nice house to store them. Like, it helps to have a garage. You don't need a garage, but at least you need a house or a townhouse. If you live in an apartment, you know, forget about it. Unless it's got a garage with charging, there's no point to that. It's just an incredible problem that you have to get over. And of course, if you move houses, then you have to move the charger with you. And oftentimes, let's say that you have a house and you sell the house, you're in limbo mode. You're not going to be like driving around in an electric car because charging it is much more difficult when you don't have a house to charge it. And that's kind of like the problem with electric cars. You need to have some money. You need to have a house. That's the number one thing. But like most things, Tesla is not perfect, and Tesla is doing things in such a way that makes people who would normally like work on cars avoid them. And I think the case for Rich Rebuilds out of New Jersey, he did a great thing for most of the Tesla people and the electric car world, because you can see all the nightmares that he's gone through with his Tesla. You have to be extremely smart to work on Teslas, and you have to be extremely smart to work on Teslas currently, because there's very few YouTube people doing that. So you have to try a little bit harder. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching the videos, and if you like what you see, hit subscribe. Sophie's getting ready to, I think she knows we're already home.